You wake up tired, not just physically tired, but mentally exhausted in a way sleep never seems to fix. You check your phone, you check your bank account, you check your life, and somewhere deep inside, there's a quiet thought you try to ignore. Is this it? Because no matter how hard you try, no matter how many hours you work, no matter how many times you promise yourself things will change, you're still here. Same stress, same cycle, same ceiling you can't seem to break through. And the truth? It's not because you're lazy. It's not because you're not capable. It's not because you don't want more. It's because you're trapped. And in this audiobook, How to Escape Low Income, you're about to understand something most people never realize in their entire lives. Low income is not just a financial situation. It's a system. It's a pattern. It's a force. And if you don't understand it, it will quietly control your entire future. In this audiobook, you will discover why working harder often keeps people stuck instead of setting them free. Why saving money alone is not enough to escape. Why your environment, your habits, and even your thinking are part of the trap. And most importantly, how to break out before it's too late. Because here's the truth most people never hear. You don't slowly climb out of low income. You either break out of it or you stay in it. This is not financial advice. This is not a get-rich-quick fantasy. This is a real, grounded psychological and practical breakdown of what it actually takes to escape. And if you stay with this, if you really listen, this might be the moment everything starts to shift. But first, you need to see the trap clearly, because you cannot escape something you don't even realize you're inside. And that brings us to Chapter 1. Chapter 1. The Gravity You Don't See. Most people think low income is just about money. That if they had more, everything would change. But that's not how it works. Low income behaves more like gravity, invisible, constant, and powerful. You don't see gravity, but you feel it in everything. The same is true here. You work all week, you earn, you try to save, and then something happens. An unexpected bill, a broken device, a medical issue, a rent increase, and just like that, you're back where you started, sometimes even worse. This isn't random, this is the system. As described in similar breakdowns like, the real issue isn't effort. It's that effort alone doesn't overcome the force pulling you back. Because here's the dangerous illusion. You think you're making progress, but you're actually maintaining position, and maintenance feels like movement until years pass. Think about that. Years. People spend 5, 10, 20 years working hard, staying disciplined, trying their best, and financially, they're still in the same place. Why? Because they never reached what we're going to call escape velocity. Not just effort, not just consistency, but a level of strategy, awareness, and leverage strong enough to break the cycle. And until that moment happens, everything you do gets pulled back down. You don't rise slowly, you stall, then drop. That's why people feel exhausted, because they're not just working, they're fighting gravity. And here's the part no one tells you. Fighting harder doesn't always help, because if you fight the wrong way, you burn more energy and still stay stuck. This is where most people break, not because they're weak, but because they're tired of trying without results. And when that happens, something shifts inside them. They stop believing change is possible. They stop taking risks. They stop thinking long-term. They shrink their expectations to match their situation. And that's when the trap becomes permanent, not external anymore, internal. You start making decisions not based on what could grow your life, but based on what feels safe right now. You stop asking, how do I escape? And start asking, how do I survive this month? That one shift changes everything, because survival thinking keeps you inside the system. Growth thinking is what breaks you out. But growth thinking requires something dangerous. It requires stepping into uncertainty. And when you're already struggling, uncertainty feels like a threat. So you stay where you are, not because you want to, but because it feels safer than the unknown. And that's how people stay stuck for years, without even realizing it. Now pause for a moment. Be honest with yourself. Are you building your way out, or are you maintaining your position? Are your actions creating movement, or just preventing collapse? Because there is a difference, a big one, and most people never see it, but you're starting to. And once you see it, you can't unsee it, which means something inside you is about to change. Because in the next chapter, we're going to break down the hidden costs of being in this system, the penalties you pay without even noticing. And once you understand that, you'll realize something even more uncomfortable. You're not just earning less, you're being charged more. Dear friend, allow me to interrupt for a moment. Our team is currently working on improving our channel and videos. May we ask you, dear viewer, what you like about our videos, or perhaps what you would like to see in our videos? Perhaps a different video format, or a different format for presenting audiobooks. Be skeptical. Your skeptical expert opinion can help us improve our videos even more. Thank you very much. We look forward to your comments under the video. Let's continue. Chapter 2. The Hidden Penalty of Being Broke. There is something deeply unfair about the system most people live in, but it's not obvious at first, because on the surface, it looks normal. You go to work, you get paid, you pay your bills, you try to move forward, nothing unusual. But underneath that surface, there's a silent penalty being applied every single day. And the worst part? Most people never realize they're paying it. Let me explain. When you don't have money, everything costs more. Not sometimes, always. You buy cheaper things because that's what you can afford. But those cheaper things break faster. So instead of paying once, you pay again, and again, and again. You don't buy in bulk, so you pay higher prices per item. You can't afford preventive care, so small problems become expensive emergencies. You miss a payment, you get hit with a fee. You're short on cash, you get hit with interest. Every step you take forward, something reaches out and takes a piece of it. And over time, those small pieces become your entire progress. This idea has been explained in different ways, including examples like where being poor doesn't just mean having less, it means being forced into decisions that cost more long term. Think about that. You're not just starting behind, you're being pushed backward while trying to move forward. It's like running on a treadmill that slowly tilts downward. You're moving, but not going anywhere. And eventually, you start to feel something dangerous, hopelessness. Because no matter what you do, it doesn't seem to add up. So you stop trying to optimize. You stop planning long term. You start thinking in shorter and shorter time frames. Today, this week, this month. And when your thinking shrinks, your options shrink with it. That's how the trap tightens, not all at once, but slowly, quietly, until one day you wake up and realize You haven't actually moved in years. Now here's the part most people avoid. It's not just external. It becomes internal. Your brain adapts to the environment. If you're constantly dealing with stress, urgency, pressure, your mind shifts into survival mode. You become reactive instead of strategic. You focus on what's urgent, not what's important. You choose relief over growth because relief feels immediate, growth feels uncertain, and when you're under pressure, uncertainty feels like danger. So you avoid it. You stick to what you know, even if what you know is keeping you stuck. This is where the real trap begins, because now it's no longer just about money. It's about identity. You start to see yourself as someone who struggles, someone who gets by, someone who can't take big risks. And once that identity forms, it shapes every decision you make. You don't apply for better opportunities because people like you don't get those. You don't invest in yourself because you can't afford to lose. You don't think bigger because you've trained yourself not to. And slowly, your world becomes smaller, safer, more predictable, but also more limited. Now let me ask you something. What if the biggest cost of low income isn't the money you don't have, but the version of yourself you never become? Let that sit for a second, because that's the real loss. Not just opportunities, but identity, potential, possibility. And here's the turning point. Once you see this clearly, you have a choice. You can continue reacting, or you can start thinking differently, not bigger, not riskier, just differently. Because escaping low income doesn't start with money. It starts with awareness, seeing the system, understanding the patterns, recognizing the invisible forces shaping your decisions. That's step one, and you've already taken it. Now we move deeper, because in the next chapter, we're going to talk about something even more uncomfortable, something most people don't want to admit. Your habits might be part of the trap, not because you're weak, not because you lack discipline, but because those habits were built to help you survive. And survival habits don't build freedom. Chapter 3. Survival habits that keep you stuck. You didn't choose most of your habits. They were built quietly over time, formed by pressure, formed by necessity, formed by survival. And that's why this chapter is uncomfortable, because some of the very behaviors that helped you get through hard times are the same behaviors keeping you there. Let's slow this down. When money is tight, you learn to react fast. You learn to solve problems quickly. You learn to stretch every dollar. You learn to prioritize urgency over everything else. At first, that feels like strength, and it is, but only for survival, not for escape. Because survival habits are short-term by design. They focus on getting through today, not building tomorrow. Think about how this shows up. You delay decisions that require upfront investment. You avoid risks, even calculated ones. You choose certainty, even when it leads nowhere. You prioritize what feels safe over what could change your life. And again, this is not your fault. This is adaptation. Just like the mindsets described in materials like people begin to operate based on their current environment rather than their potential. But adaptation has a hidden cost, because what protects you in one environment can trap you in another. Let's take a real example. Imagine two people. One grows up in constant financial pressure. The other grows up with stability. The first person learns, don't risk what you have. Play it safe. Don't lose. The second person learns, try things, fail, and adjust. Think long term. Now both enter adulthood. Who do you think is more likely to take opportunities? Who is more likely to invest in skills? Who is more likely to build something bigger than their current situation? It's not about intelligence, it's about conditioning. And if you don't recognize your conditioning, you will keep repeating it. Now here's the deeper layer. Survival habits don't just affect decisions, they affect focus. When your mind is constantly occupied with immediate problems, you lose the ability to think strategically. You don't sit down and plan 5 years ahead. You don't analyze systems. You don't build leverage because your attention is consumed. Bills, deadlines, stress. Your brain is busy but not progressing. And this is one of the biggest traps. Being busy without moving forward. You wake up early, you work hard, you stay consistent, but your actions are not compounding. They're just sustaining, like pouring water into a leaking bucket. No matter how much you add, it never fills. And eventually, you start to feel something dangerous, fatigue without progress. That's one of the fastest ways to lose motivation, because effort without reward breaks belief. Now pause. Think about your own life. Are your daily actions building something or just maintaining everything? Are you creating momentum or preventing collapse? Because those are not the same thing, and most people confuse them. Now here's the shift. You don't need to abandon all your survival habits. Some of them are valuable. Discipline, resilience, resourcefulness. Those are strengths. But you need to upgrade how they're used. Instead of using discipline just to endure, use it to build. Instead of using resilience just to survive, use it to take calculated risks. Instead of using resourcefulness just to stretch money, use it to create new income streams. That's the transition from survival to strategy. And it starts small. It doesn't require a huge leap. It requires a shift in direction. Because here's a truth most people never hear. The same energy that keeps you stuck can set you free, if you redirect it. But to do that, you need to see something else clearly. Something even more subtle, your environment. Because no matter how strong you become, if your environment keeps pulling you back, you'll keep fighting the same battle. And in the next chapter, we're going to break down the invisible influence of your surroundings and why who you're around might be shaping your income more than you think. If you enjoy these audiobooks and want to support the channel, consider joining our private members community. Members get early access to new audiobooks and exclusive wealth lessons. Chapter 4. The environment that decides your ceiling. You don't rise in isolation. You don't struggle in isolation either. Everything around you shapes you, quietly, consistently, powerfully. And most of the time, you don't even notice it. Because your environment feels normal. It feels familiar. It feels like just life. But what feels normal is often what keeps you stuck. Let's break this down. If you're surrounded by people who are constantly stressed about money, you start to normalize stress. If everyone around you is just trying to get by, you start aiming to get by. If no one is building, growing, or thinking bigger, you slowly stop thinking that way too. Not because you're weak, but because humans adapt. We mirror what we see. We absorb what we hear. We align with what surrounds us, and this happens faster than you think. You start adjusting your expectations. lowering your standards, shrinking your vision without realizing it. And the most dangerous part? It feels reasonable. It feels realistic. It feels like you're being practical. But what you're actually doing is syncing your potential to your environment. Now pause. Ask yourself this honestly. What does your environment reward? Does it reward growth or comfort? Does it reward ambition or stability? Does it reward building or just surviving? Because whatever it rewards, you will slowly move toward, even if you don't intend to. Now here's where it gets deeper. Your environment doesn't just influence what you do. It influences what you believe is possible. If you've never seen someone close to you break out financially, your brain quietly assumes it's rare, difficult, unlikely. And when something feels unlikely, you don't fully commit to it. You hesitate, you hold back, you play it safe. This is why exposure matters so much. Not motivation, not hype. Exposure. Seeing what's possible changes what feels possible. And what feels possible changes your actions. That's why people who shift environments often shift their entire trajectory. Not because they suddenly became smarter, but because their reference point changed. They started seeing differently, thinking differently, acting differently. Now here's something important. Changing your environment doesn't always mean moving to a new city. It can start smaller. What you watch, what you listen to, who you follow, what conversations you engage in. All of that shapes your mental environment. And in today's world, that matters more than ever. Because you can be physically in one place, but mentally in another. You can be surrounded by limitation, but exposed to expansion. And that exposure can start to shift how you think. But here's the truth most people avoid. If you stay fully immersed in an environment that reinforces struggle, you will struggle longer. Not because you're incapable, but because you're constantly being pulled back, just like gravity. Again. Now think about this. Have you ever noticed how hard it is to stay disciplined when everyone around you isn't? Have you ever tried to think bigger, but felt resistance from people close to you? Comments like, be realistic, don't risk it, just be grateful for what you have. Those words sound safe, but sometimes they're limits disguised as advice. And if you listen long enough, you start believing them. That's how ceilings are created, not by force, but by repetition. Now, this doesn't mean you need to cut everyone off. It means you need awareness. You need to know what's influencing you and decide what you allow. Because here's a powerful truth. You don't become what you want. You become what you're consistently exposed to. So, if you want to escape low income, you must start exposing yourself to different standards, different thinking, different possibilities, even if it feels uncomfortable, especially if it feels uncomfortable. Because growth rarely feels familiar. Now let's bring this together. You've seen the gravity. You've seen the hidden costs. You've seen the habits. You've seen the environment. And now you're starting to see the full picture. This is not random. This is a system. And once you see the system, you can start working with it, not against it. Because in the next chapter, we're going to shift from awareness to action. We're going to talk about the first real step out. Not a big step, not a risky step, but a precise one. A step that begins building momentum instead of just maintaining position. And once that momentum starts, everything changes. Chapter 5. The first step that actually moves you forward. Most people think the way out requires a massive change, a new job, a big opportunity, a breakthrough moment, something dramatic. But that's not how escape works, because if you're trapped in a system, big moves feel dangerous. And when something feels dangerous, you hesitate. So you stay where you are. That's why the first step out is not big. It's precise, it's controlled, and most importantly, it creates momentum. Because momentum is what breaks the cycle, not motivation, not luck. Momentum. Let's slow this down. Right now, most of your effort is going toward maintaining your life, paying bills, handling responsibilities, keeping everything afloat. That's survival, and survival consumes energy. So if all your energy goes there, nothing is left to build. That's the trap. So the first step is simple in concept, but powerful in execution. You must carve out a small, protected space where your effort is not used to maintain, but to build, even if it's just 1 hour, even if it's just 30 minutes. But it must be intentional, because as ideas like suggest, even a single focused hour used correctly can begin to shift direction. This is where most people fail, not because they don't have time, but because they don't protect time. They give their energy to everything else, and whatever is left goes to themselves. But if you want to escape, you'll have to reverse that. You have to claim time, not find it, not wait for it, take it, and use it differently. Now here's the key. That time is not for random effort. It's not for scrolling, not for distraction, not even for passive learning. It's for building something that can grow, a skill, a side income, a knowledge base, a system, something that compounds, because compounding is the opposite of survival. Survival resets every day. Compounding builds over time. And that's how you create escape velocity, not in one big leap, but through consistent, focused direction. Now imagine this. Every day, you invest 1 hour into something that grows. At first, nothing changes. Week 1, same life. Month 1, same situation. And this is where most people quit, because they don't see results. But what they don't realize is that something is building underneath, quietly, skills improving, understanding deepening, confidence growing. Then one day, something shifts. An opportunity appears. An income stream starts. A door opens, and suddenly, you're not starting from zero anymore. That's the moment momentum becomes visible. But it only happens if you stay consistent long enough. And consistency requires something most people struggle with: focus. Because the world is designed to distract you. Notifications, social media, entertainment, everything is competing for your attention. And attention is your most valuable resource, because where your attention goes, your life follows. So if your attention is scattered, your progress will be scattered. But if your attention is focused, your progress compounds. This is why discipline matters, not as punishment, but as protection. Protection of your time, protection of your energy, protection of your direction, and as reinforced in ideas like discipline is not about feeling ready. It's about acting when you don't feel like it. Because you won't feel like it, not every day. Some days you'll be tired. Some days you'll be discouraged. Some days you'll question everything. That's normal. But if you only act when you feel good, you'll never build enough momentum. And without momentum, you stay in the cycle. Now here's a powerful shift. Stop asking, what will change my life instantly? Start asking, what can I build daily that compounds? That question changes everything. because it moves you from hoping to building, and builders escape. Slowly at first, then suddenly. Now pause again. Think about your current routine. Is there a space, even a small one, that you can claim for growth? Not someday, not when things calm down, now. Because the sooner you start, the sooner momentum begins. And once it begins, it becomes harder to stop. That's the turning point. Now, in the next chapter, we're going to go deeper into what you should actually build. Because not all effort leads to escape. Some effort just keeps you busy. And if you choose the wrong direction, you can work hard for years and still stay stuck. So we're going to break down what actually creates leverage, what actually increases your income potential, and what actually moves you closer to freedom. Chapter 6. Build what pays, not what feels productive. There's a dangerous illusion that keeps people stuck for years. It's the illusion of productivity. You feel busy, you feel active, you feel like you're doing something, but your income doesn't change. Your position doesn't improve. Your life stays the same. Because not all effort creates results. Some effort only creates motion. And motion without direction leads nowhere. This is where many people get trapped. They spend hours learning random things, watching videos, consuming information, trying different ideas, but none of it connects, none of it compounds, none of it leads to income, and eventually they burn out. Not because they didn't try, but because they were building in the wrong direction. So let's get clear. If your goal is to escape low income, you must focus on building things that pay. Not immediately, but eventually. Because there's a difference between activity and value creation. Value is what gets paid, not effort, not time. Value. Now here's the key question. What kind of value actually increases your income? There are 3 main paths, and understanding them changes everything. The first is skill-based value. This is where you develop a skill that others are willing to pay for. It could be digital skills, communication skills, problem-solving skills, technical skills, anything that solves a problem or creates a result. Because in today's world, skills are leverage. One strong skill can multiply your income. But here's the catch. It takes time. And this is where most people quit because they don't see results fast enough. They want immediate return. But skill building is an investment. You build first, then you earn, not the other way around. The second path is system-based value. This is where you create something that works without you trading time directly. A small business, a digital product, a service that can scale, an automated process, something that continues to produce even when you're not actively working. This is where leverage becomes powerful because your income is no longer tied only to your hours. But again, this takes time to build and it requires patience. The third path is opportunity-based value. This is where you position yourself so that when opportunities appear, you're ready. Better jobs, better collaborations, better environments. But opportunities don't appear randomly. They appear when your value increases, when your skills improve, when your mindset shifts, when your network expands. That's when doors open, not before. Now, here's the truth most people avoid. You cannot escape low income by only trading time for money, because time is limited, and if your income is tied directly to your hours, your growth has a ceiling. You can work more, but only to a point, and eventually, you hit that ceiling. That's why building value is essential, because value breaks ceilings. Now let's connect this to your daily life. Remember that protected time we talked about? That 1 hour? This is where it matters, because what you do in that hour determines your direction. If you spend it randomly, you stay stuck. If you spend it strategically, you start building leverage. And leverage is what creates escape velocity. Now, here's something important. You don't need to build everything at once. You don't need to master everything. You just need to choose a direction and stay consistent. Because consistency beats intensity every time. As reinforced in ideas like focusing your energy on yourself consistently is what separates those who stay stuck from those who eventually break through. But focus requires sacrifice. You will have to say no to distractions, no to wasted time, no to things that don't move you forward. And that's not easy, because those distractions feel good in the moment, but they cost you long term. And escaping low income is a long-term game, not a short-term fix. Now pause again. Ask yourself, what am I building right now? Not what am I doing, but what am I building? Because doing fills time. Building creates future, and your future depends on what you build today, even if it's small, even if it feels slow. Because slow progress that compounds becomes unstoppable. Now, in the next chapter, we're going to talk about something even more critical, your mindset around money itself. Because even if you build skills, even if you create value, if your relationship with money is broken, you will sabotage your own progress. And most people don't even realize they're doing it. Dear viewer, we strive to create high-quality videos for you. Please assist us in improving our efforts by commenting on what you like about the video and what you would change or add. We would be very grateful. Chapter 7. The way you think about money is controlling you. Most people don't have a money problem. They have a relationship problem with money. And that relationship was built long before they ever earned their first paycheck. It was shaped by what they saw growing up, what they heard, what they experienced. Comments like, money is hard to get. Rich people are different. You have to struggle to survive. Just be grateful for what you have. At first, those sound harmless, even responsible. But over time, they form a belief system, and that belief system becomes your financial identity. You don't just earn money, you behave in alignment with what you believe about it. Let's go deeper. If you believe money is scarce, you will hold on to it tightly. You will avoid investing, avoid risk, avoid opportunity, because losing money feels more painful than gaining it, feels rewarding. So you protect what little you have, even if that protection keeps you stuck. If you believe money is difficult, you will unconsciously choose harder paths. You'll overwork, overcomplicate, overstress, because your mind expects struggle. And when something feels easier, you question it, you doubt it, you avoid it. If you believe you don't deserve more, you will never go after more. You'll settle, you'll hesitate, you'll shrink. Not because you can't grow, but because your identity won't allow it. And this is where things get real. Because as reflected in ideas like, your life rises only as high as what you believe you deserve. So if your beliefs are limited, your results will be too. Now pause. Ask yourself honestly, what do I actually believe about money? Not what you say out loud, not what sounds good, but what you feel. Do you feel like money is something you can grow or something you have to chase? Do you feel like you're capable of increasing your income, or just managing what you have, because those feelings shape your actions, and your actions shape your results. Now here's the shift. You don't need to force positive thinking. You don't need fake confidence. You need awareness. You need to start noticing your patterns. Notice when you avoid opportunities. Notice when you hesitate to invest in yourself. Notice when you play small, not to judge yourself, but to understand yourself. Because once you see the pattern, you can interrupt it. Now, here's something powerful. Your beliefs are not fixed. They were learned, which means they can be changed. But change doesn't happen through words. It happens through evidence. Small wins, small risks, small proofs that something different is possible. You don't jump from limitation to abundance overnight. You build your way there, one decision at a time. Now let's make this practical. Instead of thinking, I can't afford this, start asking, how can I afford this? That one shift moves your brain from limitation to problem solving. Instead of thinking, this is too risky, ask, what is the smallest version of this I can try? Now you're not avoiding risk, you're managing it. Instead of thinking, I'm not ready, ask, what would make me ready? Now you're building capability. These are small shifts, but small shifts change direction, and direction is what determines your future. Now here's a truth you need to hear. You will never outperform your financial identity. If you see yourself as someone who struggles, you will find ways to struggle. If you see yourself as someone who builds, you will find ways to build. So part of escaping low income is not just increasing income. It's upgrading identity, becoming someone who seeks opportunity, builds value, thinks long-term, takes calculated risks, not perfectly, but consistently. Because consistency reshapes identity, and identity shapes everything. Now, we're about to go even deeper, because in the next chapter, we're going to talk about something that quietly destroys progress, even when everything else is right. Distraction. Because you can have the right mindset, the right plan, the right intentions, and still stay stuck if your attention is constantly being pulled away. And in today's world, distraction is not an accident. It's a system. Chapter 8. The distraction system that keeps you poor. You're not just fighting financial pressure. You're fighting attention theft. And most people don't even realize it's happening because distraction doesn't feel dangerous. It feels normal. It feels harmless. It even feels deserved. You work hard. You feel tired. You tell yourself, I need a break. So you open your phone just for a few minutes. But those few minutes turn into hours, scrolling, watching, consuming. And when you finally stop, nothing has changed. Except one thing, your time is gone, and time is the only resource that could have changed your situation. This is not an accident. This is a system. Because in today's world, your attention is currency. Companies compete for it. Platforms are designed to hold it. Algorithms are built to keep you engaged, not growing, not building, just engaged. And the longer you stay engaged, the less you build. Now think about this carefully. If you spend your free time consuming, when exactly are you creating? If your energy is constantly drained, when exactly are you building? If your focus is always scattered, when exactly are you progressing? This is the hidden cost of distraction. It doesn't destroy your life instantly. It delays it quietly, day after day, until years pass and nothing has changed. Now here's the deeper layer. Distraction feels good in the moment. It gives you relief. Relief from stress. Relief from pressure. Relief from thinking. And when you're stuck in a difficult situation, relief becomes addictive because it's the only time you feel free. But here's the truth. Relief is not the same as progress. And if you rely on relief too often, you sacrifice progress. That's the trade. And most people don't even realize they're making it. Now let's connect this to what we've already talked about. You need focused time to build. You need consistency to create momentum. You need attention to develop skills. But distraction breaks all of that. It fragments your focus. It interrupts your effort. It resets your progress. It turns hours into minutes, and minutes into nothing. And over time, it becomes one of the biggest reasons people stay stuck. Not because they don't have potential, but because their attention is constantly being pulled away from it. Now pause. Be honest with yourself. How much time do you lose every day to distraction? Not intentionally, not consciously, but automatically. Because those small moments add up. 30 minutes here, 1 hour there, and suddenly you've lost 3, 4, 5 hours every single day. That's time that could have been used to build, to learn, to create, to move forward, but instead, it disappears. And with it, your momentum. Now here's the shift. You don't need to eliminate all distraction. That's unrealistic. But you need to control it. You need boundaries. You need awareness. You need to decide when you consume and when you create. Because if you don't decide, the system will decide for you, and it will always choose consumption. Now let's make this practical. Start by identifying your biggest distractions. Is it social media, videos, gaming, constant notifications? Then set limits. Not forever, just during your building time. That protected hour we talked about earlier, that time must be distraction-free. No scrolling, no interruptions, no noise, just focus. Because even 1 hour of pure focus is more powerful than 5 hours of distracted effort. Now here's something important. At first, it will feel uncomfortable. Your mind will crave distraction. It will look for escape. That's normal because you've trained it that way. But if you stay with it, if you push through that discomfort, something changes. Your focus strengthens. Your clarity improves. Your progress accelerates. And slowly, you start to feel something new. Control. Not over everything, but over your time, over your attention, over your direction. And that control is one of the first real signs of escape. Because once you control your attention, you can direct your life. Now here's a powerful line to remember. Where your attention goes, your future follows. So choose carefully, because every moment you spend distracted is a moment your future is delayed. And every moment you spend focused is a step closer to freedom. Now, in the next chapter, we're going to talk about something that holds many people back, even when they start doing everything right. Fear. Not fear of failure, but fear of losing what little they have. And that fear can quietly stop you from ever making the moves that matter. Chapter 9. The fear that keeps you playing small. There is a type of fear that doesn't look like fear. It doesn't feel like panic. It doesn't feel like danger. It feels like caution, responsibility, practical thinking. But underneath it, it's still fear. And it's one of the biggest reasons people never escape low income. Because this fear doesn't stop you from acting completely. It just limits how far you're willing to go. Let's break it down. When you don't have much, What you do have feels extremely important. Every dollar matters. Every decision feels heavy. Every mistake feels expensive. So naturally, you become careful. You avoid unnecessary risks. You stick to what you know. You protect what you have. Again, this makes sense. But here's the problem. Escaping low income requires movement, and movement always involves uncertainty. So now you're stuck in a contradiction. You need to take steps forward, but those steps feel risky, and risk feels like loss. So you hesitate, you delay, you wait for the perfect moment, but that moment never comes because perfect conditions don't exist. Now, here's where it gets deeper. This fear doesn't just affect big decisions, it affects small ones too. You don't invest in learning because you're afraid it won't pay off. You don't try new opportunities because you're afraid they won't work. You don't take chances because you're afraid of losing time or money. So instead, you stay in what feels safe, but safe doesn't mean growth. Safe means stable, and stability without progress is just slow stagnation. Now pause. Ask yourself honestly, am I avoiding risk or am I avoiding growth? Because those two are often the same thing. Now here's the truth you need to understand. There is no path out of low income that doesn't involve some level of risk. None. But here's the key. It's not about taking big risks. It's about taking controlled risks, calculated risks, small steps with awareness. Because risk doesn't have to mean gambling everything. It can mean trying something new on a small scale. It can mean investing a little time instead of a lot of money. It can mean testing instead of committing blindly. This is how you move forward without putting everything at risk. Now let's connect this to discipline, because fear often shows up when things get uncomfortable, when you're tired, when progress feels slow, when results are unclear. That's when your mind starts looking for reasons to stop, reasons to go back, reasons to stay safe. And this is where discipline becomes critical, as reinforced in ideas like discipline is acting despite discomfort, despite doubt, despite fear. Because if you wait until you feel confident, you will never move. Confidence comes after action, not before. Now here's a powerful shift. Instead of asking, what if this fails? Ask, what if this works? Because your brain is constantly predicting outcomes. If you only focus on negative outcomes, you'll avoid action. But if you allow yourself to consider positive outcomes, you open the door to possibility. Now, this doesn't mean blind optimism. It means balanced thinking, seeing both sides, understanding the risk, but also the reward. Because avoiding risk entirely is the biggest risk of all. It guarantees one thing: no change. And no change means staying exactly where you are. Now here's something important. You don't need to become fearless. That's unrealistic. You just need to become willing. Willing to try. Willing to learn. Willing to adjust. Because progress doesn't come from perfect decisions. It comes from movement, trial and error, action and correction. And every small step you take reduces fear. Because fear thrives in the unknown. But action turns the unknown into experience. Now pause again. Think about something you've been avoiding, a skill you haven't started, an idea you haven't tried, a step you've been delaying. What if you approached it differently? Not as a big risk, but as a small experiment. Something you can test, learn from, adjust. That's how you move forward without overwhelming yourself. That's how you build confidence, step by step. Now here's the line to remember. Fear doesn't mean stop. It means you're at the edge of growth. And if you keep stepping back from that edge, you will stay in the same place. But if you lean into it carefully, consistently, you start expanding your limits. And once your limits expand, your opportunities do too. Now, in the next chapter, we're going to talk about something that quietly determines your progress, even more than effort, your standards, because what you accept becomes your reality. And if your standards are low, your results will match them. If you appreciate our efforts and our thoughts, subscribe and like this video. We need to show the world that there are many people like us. We must always continue to improve. Chapter 10. Your standards are your invisible limits. You don't get what you want in life. You get what you tolerate. And that might be one of the hardest truths to accept, because it means your current situation is not just something that happened to you. It's something you've adapted to, something you've learned to live with, something you've accepted. Now, before you react to that, understand this clearly. Acceptance is not weakness, it's survival. You adjusted to your environment. You did what you had to do. You made it work. That takes strength. But what helped you survive can also hold you back from growing. Because once you accept something as normal, you stop challenging it. And when you stop challenging something, it stays the same. Let's make this real. If you accept low pay, you won't push for higher value. If you accept constant stress, you won't look for better systems. If you accept being tired all the time, you won't prioritize energy. If you accept this is just how life is, you stop questioning it. And that's where growth ends. Now here's the deeper layer. Your standards are not just about what you accept externally. They're about what you expect from yourself, how you spend your time, how you manage your energy, how you follow through on your commitments, because your daily standards shape your daily actions, and your daily actions shape your future. Now pause. Ask yourself honestly, what have I been accepting that I shouldn't? Maybe it's wasted time. Maybe it's poor habits. Maybe it's environments that drain you. Maybe it's excuses you repeated for years. Whatever it is, it has become part of your normal. And normal is powerful, because normal doesn't feel wrong. It feels familiar. But familiar doesn't mean good. Now here's the shift. If you want a different life, you need different standards, not extreme standards, not unrealistic expectations, but higher ones, slightly higher, because even small upgrades change direction. Instead of accepting distraction, you start protecting focus. Instead of accepting inconsistency, you start building discipline. Instead of accepting survival thinking, you start thinking long-term. These are not massive changes, but they compound. And compounding is how you escape. Now here's something important. Raising your standards will feel uncomfortable because it creates friction. You'll notice things you used to ignore. You'll feel resistance where you used to feel comfort. You'll question habits you used to justify. That's growth. Not easy, but necessary. And this is where many people fall back, because discomfort feels like something is wrong. But in reality, discomfort is often a sign that something is changing. Now let's connect this to identity, because your standards are a reflection of who you believe you are. If you see yourself as someone who struggles, your standards will match that. If you see yourself as someone who builds, your standards will rise. That's why identity matters so much. As we touched on earlier, you don't just change actions, you change how you see yourself. You become someone who values time, protects focus, builds consistently, moves forward, even when it's hard. Not perfectly, but intentionally. Now here's a powerful question. What would someone who has escaped this situation do differently today? Not next year, not someday. Today. How would they spend their time? What would they focus on? What would they ignore? Because that version of you already exists as a possibility, and every decision you make either moves you closer to that version or further away. Now let's ground this again. You don't need to change everything at once. That's overwhelming. You just need to raise one standard, one. Maybe it's protecting your focus for 1 hour a day. Maybe it's committing to building a skill consistently. Maybe it's reducing distractions. Start there, because one upgraded standard leads to another. And over time, your entire life shifts. Now here's the line to remember. Your life doesn't rise to your goals. It falls to your standards. So if your standards stay the same, your results will too. But if your standards rise, even slightly, your direction changes. And direction is everything. Now, in the next chapter, we're going to talk about something that amplifies everything we've discussed so far, something that can accelerate your progress or completely destroy it, your circle, because who you spend time with will either reinforce your standards or lower them, and that influence is stronger than you think. Chapter 11, Your Circle is quietly deciding your future. You can have the right mindset, the right plan, the right intentions, and still stay stuck because of one thing, the people around you. This is not about blaming others. This is about understanding influence, because influence is invisible but powerful. Let's slow this down. Every conversation you have shapes your thinking. Every opinion you hear plants a seed. Every reaction you receive affects your confidence. And over time, those small influences become your internal voice. Now think about your current circle. What do you talk about most? Problems, complaints, stress, or growth? Ideas, opportunities? Because what you talk about, you start to focus on. And what you focus on, you start to build. Now here's the uncomfortable truth. If your circle is focused on surviving, you will stay in survival mode. If your circle avoids risk, you will avoid risk. If your circle normalizes struggle, you will normalize struggle, not because you want to, but because you adapt. Again, now pause. Ask yourself honestly, are the people around me pushing me forward or keeping me where I am? And be careful here, because support and growth are not the same. Someone can support you and still keep you small. They can care about you and still limit you. They can want the best for you, but only within what they understand. And if they've never experienced growth, they won't encourage it. They'll encourage safety, comfort, stability, because that's what feels right to them. Now here's something important. You don't need to cut people off. You don't need to isolate yourself, but you do need balance. You need exposure to different thinking, different standards, different conversations, because as ideas like highlight, growth often happens quietly, through focused action, not constant discussion, and the wrong environment can disrupt that focus. Let's make this practical. If your current environment doesn't support growth, you must create a secondary environment that does. That can be books, audiobooks, podcasts, online communities, mentors you learn from indirectly. Because in today's world, you are not limited to your physical circle. You can choose what influences you. You can choose what you consume. You can choose what voices you listen to. And those choices shape your direction. Now here's the deeper layer. Your circle doesn't just influence what you think. It influences what you believe is possible for you. If no one around you is building something, you'll feel like building is rare. If no one around you is increasing their income, you'll feel like growth is limited. And when something feels rare, you don't fully commit to it. You hesitate, you doubt, you hold back. But when you start exposing yourself to people who are building, who are growing, who are thinking differently, something shifts. It starts to feel possible. Not easy, but possible. And possibility is what creates action. Now let's connect this to your standards. If your environment has low standards, you will constantly have to fight to raise yours. Every day becomes a battle. But if your environment has higher standards, you naturally rise. You don't have to force it. You align with it. That's why environment matters so much. Because it either supports your growth or resists it. Now here's a powerful question. Who do I need to listen to more? And who do I need to listen to less? Not out of disrespect, but out of intention. Because your future depends on what you allow to influence you. Now let's ground this again. You don't need a perfect circle. You just need better input, more intentional input, more growth-focused input. Because input shapes thinking. Thinking shapes action. Action shapes results. It's all connected. Now here's the line to remember. You don't rise alone, but you do choose who you rise with. And that choice matters more than you think. Now in the next chapter, we're going to talk about something that separates those who stay stuck from those who break through. Consistency. Because starting is easy. Everyone starts. But very few people continue long enough to see results. And without consistency, nothing compounds, nothing builds, nothing changes. Mate, write which city you're from. It's interesting to see which corners of the world are watching our videos. Chapter 12, Consistency is the real escape plan. Everyone wants change, but very few people are willing to stay consistent long enough to create it. That's the gap. That's the difference. Because starting something feels exciting. There's energy, there's motivation, there's hope. You decide, I'm going to change my life. I'm going to build something. I'm going to do this differently. And for a few days, maybe even a few weeks, you follow through. You focus. You work. You push. But then something happens. You get tired. Life gets busy. Results don't show up fast enough. And slowly, you stop. Not completely, just enough to break momentum. And once momentum breaks, starting again feels harder. So you delay. You wait. You tell yourself you'll get back to it, but days turn into weeks. Weeks turn into months. And suddenly, you're back where you started. This is the cycle that traps most people. Not lack of effort, but lack of consistency. Because effort without consistency resets progress every time. Now let's go deeper. Consistency is not about doing everything perfectly. It's about showing up, even when it's imperfect, even when you're tired, even when you don't feel like it, even when the results are invisible. That's where real progress happens. Not in the moments when you're motivated, but in the moments when you're not. Because motivation is temporary. It comes and goes. But consistency is a decision, a standard, a commitment. And as reinforced in ideas like, the people who win are not the ones who feel ready. They're the ones who stay focused on themselves long enough to see results. Now here's the truth most people avoid. Consistency is boring. It's repetitive, it's slow, it's not exciting every day, and that's why people quit. Because they expect progress to feel exciting. But real progress feels like routine, daily effort, daily discipline, daily repetition. And over time, those small actions build something powerful, momentum. Now remember what we talked about earlier. Momentum is what breaks the cycle. And consistency is what creates momentum. Without consistency, there is no momentum. Without momentum, there is no escape. Now, let's make this practical. That 1 hour you've claimed for yourself, that's your foundation, your consistency zone. And your goal is simple. Show up every day, not perfectly, but consistently. Some days you'll do more. Some days you'll do less. But you don't stop, because stopping resets everything. Now here's something important. You need to remove the pressure of perfection, because perfection kills consistency. If you think, I have to do this perfectly, you'll eventually quit when you can't maintain it. But if you think, I just need to show up, you keep going. And showing up is what builds results. Now let's connect this to identity again. Every time you show up, you reinforce a new identity. You become someone who follows through, someone who builds, someone who stays consistent. And that identity makes future consistency easier, because now it's not just something you do, it's who you are. Now pause. Ask yourself, have I been inconsistent or just expecting too much too fast? Because sometimes the problem is not lack of effort. It's unrealistic expectations. You expect results in weeks, when real change takes months. You expect clarity immediately, when clarity comes through action. You expect confidence before starting, when confidence comes after. And those expectations cause you to quit too early. Now here's the shift. Stop focusing on results. Start focusing on repetition, because repetition leads to results, not the other way around. Now here's a powerful line to remember. You don't rise because of what you do once. You rise because of what you repeat daily. So if you repeat distraction, you build stagnation. If you repeat focus, you build progress. If you repeat discipline, you build freedom. It's that simple. Not easy, but simple. Now let's bring this together. You've seen the system. You've seen the habits. You've seen the environment. You've started building. Now consistency is what connects it all. It's the bridge between where you are and where you want to be. And if you stay on that bridge long enough, you will cross. Now, in the next chapter, we're going to talk about something that accelerates consistency and makes everything easier. Clarity. Because when you know exactly what you're building and why, staying consistent becomes much more natural. And without clarity, even the most disciplined people can lose direction. Chapter 13. Clarity creates speed. Most people are not stuck because they're lazy. They're stuck because they're unclear. They don't know exactly what they're building. They don't know exactly where they're going. They don't know exactly what matters most. So they do a little bit of everything. They try different things. They switch directions. They start, then restart. And every time they restart, they lose momentum. That's the cost of confusion. Because without clarity, effort gets scattered. And scattered effort doesn't compound. Now let's slow this down. Imagine trying to build something without knowing what it's supposed to look like. You'd waste time. You'd second-guess yourself. You'd keep adjusting, not because you're incapable, but because you lack direction. That's exactly what happens in life. When your direction is unclear, your progress slows down. Not because you're not working, but because your work isn't aligned. Now here's the truth. Clarity doesn't come from thinking, it comes from doing. Most people wait to feel ready. They wait to figure everything out. But that moment never comes, because clarity is built through action. You try something, you learn, you adjust, and with each step, your direction sharpens. Now here's where many people get stuck. They think clarity means having the perfect plan. It doesn't. Clarity means knowing your next step. That's it. Not the next year, not the next 5 years, just the next move. Because once you take that step, the next one becomes clearer, and then the next. That's how direction is built, step by step. Now let's connect this to your situation. You don't need to know exactly how you'll escape. You just need to know what you're building right now. A skill, a system, a source of value. Something that moves you forward. Because once you're moving, you can adjust direction. But if you're standing still, nothing changes. Now pause. Ask yourself, what am I building right now? Not what I might build, not what I'm thinking about. What am I actively building? If the answer is unclear, that's your starting point. Because clarity begins with a decision, a direction, even if it's not perfect. Now here's something important. Clarity removes hesitation. When you know what you're doing, you stop overthinking, you stop delaying, you stop wasting energy on decisions that don't matter. And that energy goes into action. That's where speed comes from, not rushing, but removing friction. Because confusion creates friction. Clarity removes it. Now let's bring this into your daily routine. That 1 hour you've claimed, it needs a clear purpose. Not just work on something, but something specific. Learn this skill. Build this project. Improve this area. Because specific action creates measurable progress, and measurable progress builds confidence. Now here's a powerful shift. Instead of asking, what should I do? Ask, what will move me forward right now? That question cuts through confusion. It focuses your attention. It directs your energy, and direction is everything. Now let's connect this to consistency. When you're unclear, consistency feels hard because you're not sure if what you're doing matters. But when you're clear, consistency feels easier because you know your actions have purpose. And purpose fuels discipline. Now here's the line to remember. Clarity doesn't come before action. It comes because of action. So stop waiting to feel certain. Start moving, even if it's imperfect, even if it's slow, because movement creates clarity, and clarity creates speed. Now, we're about to go even deeper, because in the next chapter, we're going to talk about something that determines how fast you grow once you start moving, your ability to learn. Because in today's world, learning is not optional. It's leverage. And if you learn faster than others, you move faster than others. Chapter 14. Learn faster or stay behind. There is a silent divide in today's world. It's not just between rich and poor. It's between those who learn fast and those who stay the same. Because in a world that is constantly changing, your ability to learn is your ability to adapt. And your ability to adapt determines whether you grow or fall behind. Now let's be clear, learning is not about information, it's about transformation, because information alone does nothing. You can watch hours of videos, read dozens of books, consume endless content, and still your life stays exactly the same. Why? Because learning only matters when it changes how you act. That's the difference. Now here's the problem. Most people consume but don't apply. They watch, they listen, they feel motivated, but then they go back to their routine. Nothing changes. And over time, they mistake consumption for progress. But consumption is passive. Progress is active. Now let's slow this down. Think about your own habits. How much time do you spend learning versus applying? How much of what you've learned have you actually used? Because if you're not applying, you're not learning. You're just collecting information. And information without action has no value. Now here's the shift. You don't need to learn more. You need to apply more. Take one idea and use it. Test it. Adjust it. Build with it. Because application creates understanding, and understanding creates skill. Now let's connect this to your escape. Remember what we talked about earlier. You need to build value, skills, systems, opportunities. And all of that requires learning. But not random learning, focused learning. Learning that directly supports what you're building. Because random learning creates confusion. Focused learning creates progress. Now, here's something important. You don't need to master everything. You just need to get good enough to create value. Because value is what gets paid, not perfection, not expertise at the highest level, just enough skill to solve problems. Now, here's the advantage you have. In today's world, learning has never been more accessible. You can learn almost anything from anywhere, for free or at low cost. That means your growth is no longer limited by access. It's limited by focus and discipline. Now pause. Ask yourself, am I learning with intention or just consuming randomly? Because intention is what turns learning into leverage. Now let's make this practical. Choose one area, one skill, one direction, and go deep. Not wide, deep. Because depth creates value. Depth creates differentiation. Depth creates income potential. Now here's the next step. Apply what you learn immediately. Don't wait. Don't overthink. Don't try to be perfect. Just use it. Because the faster you apply, the faster you improve. And the faster you improve, the faster you move forward. Now here's something powerful. When you combine learning with consistency, you accelerate everything. Your skills grow faster. Your confidence builds faster. Your opportunities increase faster. That's how you create momentum, not just through effort, but through intelligent effort. Now let's connect this to mindset, because learning requires humility. You have to admit that you don't know everything, that you need to improve, that you're still building, and for some people, that's uncomfortable. But growth always requires humility, because you can't improve if you think you already know enough. Now here's the line to remember. The faster you learn, the faster you escape. Because learning is leverage. It compresses time. It turns months into weeks, years into months. But only if you apply it. Now let's bring this together. You've built awareness. You've started taking action. You're building consistency. Now learning is what accelerates your progress. It's what gives you an edge. It's what separates you from those who stay stuck. Now in the next chapter, we're going to talk about something that multiplies everything you've built so far: execution. because knowing what to do and actually doing it are two completely different things, and most people never close that gap. Chapter 15, Execution is where everything either happens or dies. There is a moment where everything becomes real. Not when you learn something, not when you plan something, not when you feel motivated, but when you act. Because action is the only place where change actually happens. And this is where most people fail. Not because they don't know what to do, but because they don't execute. They think, they plan, they prepare, but they don't move. Or they move once and then stop. And without execution, nothing builds, nothing changes, nothing compounds. Now let's slow this down. Execution is not about doing everything. It's about doing the right things consistently. Because knowing what to do means nothing if you don't do it. You can have the best strategy, the best ideas, the best intentions, but without execution, it all stays potential, and potential does not pay. Now here's the deeper truth. Execution is uncomfortable because it forces you to face reality. No more thinking, no more imagining, no more someday, just action. And action brings feedback, real feedback, sometimes positive, sometimes negative, and that's where most people pull back. Because feedback can hurt. It can expose weaknesses, show mistakes, challenge your confidence. So instead of adjusting, they stop. They go back to thinking, back to planning, back to getting ready. But ready is a trap, because you will never feel fully ready. Execution is what makes you ready. Now let's connect this to everything we've built so far. You have awareness. You have direction. You're building consistency. You're learning. Now execution is what turns all of that into results. Without it, everything stays theoretical. Now here's the key. Execution doesn't need to be perfect. It needs to be consistent, because imperfect action still creates progress. Perfect inaction creates nothing. Now let's make this practical. That 1 hour you've claimed, that's your execution window. Not thinking time, not planning time. Execution time. You use that hour to practice your skill, build your project, create something real, something tangible, something that moves you forward. Now here's something important. You need to lower the barrier to action, because the bigger the task feels, the more you delay it. So make it smaller. Instead of, I need to build this entire thing, start with, I'll work on this part. Instead of, I need to master this skill, start with, I'll practice this specific piece. Because small actions are easier to start, and starting is the hardest part. Now here's the next layer. Execution builds confidence, not the other way around. You don't become confident and then act. You act, and then confidence grows. Because every time you execute, you prove something to yourself. You prove that you can move, that you can build, that you can improve, and that proof changes your identity. Now let's connect this to fear. Remember earlier, we talked about fear of risk. Execution is how you reduce that fear, because once you act, you gain experience, and experience replaces uncertainty. The unknown becomes known, and fear loses its power. Now here's the truth most people avoid. Execution is where excuses show up. I'm too tired. I don't have time. I'll start tomorrow. Those thoughts will come every day, but as reinforced in ideas like discipline is refusing to negotiate with those excuses. Because if you negotiate, you lose every time. Now pause. Ask yourself, have I been avoiding execution or just overthinking it? Because overthinking often feels like progress, but it's not. It's delay, and delay is the silent killer of growth. Now here's the shift. Start before you feel ready. Start before you feel confident. Start before everything's clear, because starting creates everything else. Now here's the line to remember. Execution turns ideas into income. Everything else is preparation. So if you stay in preparation, you stay stuck. But if you execute, even imperfectly, you move. And movement is what creates change. Now we're about to take this even further, because in the next chapter, we're going to talk about something that determines how far your execution can take you. Leverage. Because working harder is not enough. You need to learn how to multiply your effort, how to make your time work for you, how to create results that grow beyond your direct input. And once you understand that, everything starts to scale. Chapter 16. Leverage is how you break the ceiling. There is a limit to how much you can earn if your income depends only on your time. And most people never escape low income because they stay trapped in that equation. Time for money, hour for pay, effort for survival, and at first, it works. You show up, you get paid, you repeat. But over time, you start to feel it, the ceiling. You can work more hours, but only to a point. You can push harder, but only for so long. And eventually, you run out of time. That's the problem, because time is fixed. You get 24 hours, no more. So if your income depends only on your time, your growth is limited, no matter how hard you work. Now this is where leverage changes everything. Leverage is how you multiply your effort. It's how you create results that go beyond your direct input. It's how you break the ceiling. Now let's make this simple. Without leverage, you work, you earn, you stop. Income stops. With leverage, you build, it continues, you earn, even when you're not actively working. That's the difference. Now there are different forms of leverage, and understanding them is critical. The first is skill leverage. This is where your skill becomes more valuable. Instead of earning a low rate for your time, you earn a higher rate, because your skill solves bigger problems, creates more value, and when you create more value, you get paid more. This is the simplest form of leverage, but it's still powerful. The second is time leverage. This is where you use systems or people to extend your output. Instead of doing everything yourself, you create processes, you delegate, you automate. So your time is no longer the only driver of results. The third is asset leverage. This is where you build something once and it continues to produce content, products, digital assets, systems, things that keep working even when you're not. This is where real scale happens, because now your income is no longer tied to your hours. Now, here's the truth most people don't hear. Leverage takes time to build. It doesn't give immediate results. And that's why most people never reach it, because they quit too early. They expect fast returns from something that compounds slowly, but once leverage starts working, everything changes. Now let's connect this to your journey right now. You're building skills, you're building consistency, you're executing. That's the foundation. Leverage comes after, but you must be intentional, because not all effort creates leverage. Some effort just keeps you busy. So you need to ask, is what I'm building scalable? Can this grow beyond my direct effort? Can this produce results over time? Because those are the paths that lead to escape. Now pause. Think about what you're currently building. Is it tied only to your time, or does it have the potential to grow? Because that difference determines your future. Now here's something important. You don't need to build massive leverage immediately. Start small. A small skill that increases your value. A small system that saves time. A small project that can grow. Because small leverage becomes big leverage over time. And again, this comes back to consistency. Because leverage compounds, and compounding requires time. Now let's connect this to mindset. Because leverage requires patience. You have to be willing to build now for results later. And that's difficult, especially when you're under pressure, because when you're struggling, you want immediate relief, not long-term growth. But if you only focus on immediate relief, you stay in the cycle. So you need balance. You handle your present while building your future at the same time. Now here's the line to remember. You don't escape low income by working harder. You escape by building smarter, because hard work alone keeps you running. Smart work with leverage moves you forward. Now we're about to go deeper again, because in the next chapter, we're going to talk about something that determines how long you stay on this path. Patience. Because even if you do everything right, progress takes time. And if you don't understand that, you will quit before it works. Chapter 17. Patience is the price of escape. There is a moment in every journey where nothing seems to be happening. You're working, you're building, you're staying consistent. But your life still looks the same. Your income hasn't changed yet. Your situation feels familiar. Your progress feels invisible. And in that moment, most people quit. Not because they're incapable, but because they're impatient. Because they expected faster results, faster change, faster proof that it's working. But here's the truth you need to understand. Real change is slow until it isn't. Let's break this down. When you start building something, the early stages are quiet. There's no recognition, no visible reward, no immediate payoff, just effort, repeated effort. And this is where belief gets tested. Because when results are invisible, your mind starts questioning everything. Is this worth it? Is this even working? Should I try something else? And those questions pull you off track. They break your consistency. They reset your momentum. And you end up starting over again. This is why patience is not optional. It's required, because without patience, you will never stay on one path long enough to see results. Now let's go deeper. Patience is not passive. It's active. It's continuing to show up. Even when nothing seems to be changing, it's trusting the process. While you're still building it, it's staying focused. While everything feels uncertain. And that's hard, because we live in a world that rewards speed. Instant results, quick wins, fast success. But escape is not instant. It's gradual. It's built over time, through consistency, through learning, through execution. Now here's the shift. Instead of focusing on how fast things are changing, focus on whether you're improving, because improvement is the real signal. Are your skills better than last month? Is your focus stronger? Is your discipline more consistent? If the answer is yes, then you are progressing, even if your external results haven't caught up yet, because results lag behind effort, always. Now here's something important. Most people quit right before things start to work, right before momentum becomes visible, right before opportunities appear, because they mistake slow progress for no progress. But those are not the same. Slow progress is still progress. And if you stay consistent, it compounds. Now let's connect this to leverage. Remember what we talked about earlier. Leverage takes time to build. It doesn't pay immediately. But once it starts working, it accelerates everything. That's why patience matters. Because you're building something that hasn't paid off yet, but will. Now pause. Ask yourself, have I been quitting too early? Or is it actually not working? Because sometimes the issue is not the path. It's the time you've given it. Now here's a powerful truth. Most people don't fail. They just stop too soon. And stopping too soon is the same as never starting, because you never reach the point where things begin to compound. Now let's make this practical. Set a longer horizon. Stop thinking in days or weeks. Start thinking in months, even years. Not to delay action, but to manage expectations. Because when you expect long-term results, you're less likely to quit early. And when you stay longer, you see more. Now, here's something else. Patience becomes easier when you focus on the process, not the outcome. If your only goal is results, you'll get frustrated when they don't appear quickly. But if your goal is to show up daily, to improve, to build, then every day feels like progress. And progress keeps you going. Now here's the line to remember. Time will pass anyway. The question is what you build while it does. Because whether you act or not, months will go by. Years will pass. The only difference is what you create during that time. Now let's bring this together. You've built awareness, you've taken action, you're consistent, you're learning, you're executing, you're building leverage. Now patience is what allows all of that to turn into results. Without it, you quit too early. With it, you reach the breakthrough. Now in the next chapter, we're going to talk about something that often appears right before that breakthrough. Failure. Because failure is not the end. It's part of the process. And if you don't understand how to handle it, it can push you right back into the cycle. Chapter 18. Failure is not the end, it's the filter. There is a moment that breaks most people, not the beginning, not the struggle, not even the waiting, but failure, the moment when something doesn't work. You try, and it falls apart. You build, and it doesn't pay. You move, and nothing changes. And suddenly, everything you believed starts to shake. Maybe this isn't for me. Maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I should just go back to what I know. And just like that, you step back, not because you're incapable, but because you misunderstood what failure means. Now listen carefully. Failure is not the opposite of success. It's part of it. It's not a sign to stop. It's a signal to adjust. But most people don't see it that way. They see failure as proof that they should quit, and that's why they stay stuck. Now let's slow this down. When you're building something new, you are stepping into the unknown, and in the unknown, mistakes are guaranteed. Things won't work the first time, or the second, or sometimes even the 10th. That's not because you're doing it wrong. That's because you're learning. But if you expect everything to work immediately, every failure will feel like a setback instead of what it really is, feedback. Now here's the shift. Instead of asking, why did this fail? Ask, what did this teach me? Because every failure contains information. Information about what works, what doesn't, what needs to change. And if you use that information, you improve. But if you ignore it, you repeat the same mistakes. Now, let's connect this to your journey. You are building something new, a new direction, a new mindset, a new path, and on that path, you will fail, not once, multiple times. That's part of the process. Because as you execute, you refine, you adjust, you get better, and that's how progress happens. Now here's the dangerous part. If you take failure personally, you stop. You attach it to your identity. I failed becomes I am a failure. And once that belief sets in, you hesitate to try again. You protect yourself. You avoid risk. You go back to what feels safe. And just like that, you return to the cycle. That's how people get stuck again. Not because of failure, but because of how they respond to it. Now pause. Think about your past. How many times have you stopped because something didn't work? How many opportunities did you walk away from too early? Because those moments matter. Now here's the truth. Failure only becomes permanent when you stop trying. If you keep going, it becomes part of your growth. If you quit, it becomes your ending. Now let's make this practical. When something doesn't work, don't stop. Break it down. What went wrong? What can you improve? What can you try differently? Then adjust and try again. Because progress is not linear. It's messy, up and down, forward and back. But overall, moving ahead. Now let's connect this to patience. Failure feels worse when you expect fast results because you think, I shouldn't be struggling this much. But if you understand that struggle is part of the process, failure becomes easier to handle because it's expected. Now here's something powerful. Every time you push through failure, you build resilience. And resilience is one of the strongest assets you can have because the path out is not smooth. It's challenging, uncertain, sometimes frustrating, and without resilience, you won't stay on it. Now let's connect this to identity again. Every time you face failure and keep going, you become someone stronger, someone more capable, someone more prepared, and that identity makes future challenges easier to handle. Now here's the line to remember. Failure doesn't stop you. Quitting does. So if you remove quitting, failure loses its power. Now let's bring this together. You've built awareness. You've taken action. You're consistent. You're learning. You're executing. You're building leverage. You're practicing patience. Now failure is just part of the process. Not something to fear, but something to use. Because every step, even the ones that don't work, are moving you forward if you let them. Now in the next chapter, we're going to talk about something that determines whether all of this becomes real or stays temporary. Commitment. Because starting is one thing, continuing is another. But committing is what makes it permanent. Chapter 19. Commitment is the point of no return. There is a difference between trying and committing. Trying sounds like effort. It sounds like intention. It feels like progress. But trying has an escape door, an exit, a way out when things get hard. Commitment does not. Commitment closes the exit. It says, this is not optional. This is not temporary. This is who I am becoming. And that shift changes everything. Because when you're just trying, you stop when it's inconvenient. You pause when it's uncomfortable. You quit when it's difficult. But when you're committed, you adjust, you adapt, you continue, no matter what. Now let's slow this down. Think about everything we've built so far. Awareness, action, consistency, learning, execution, leverage, patience, resilience, all of that only works if you stay on the path. And staying on the path requires commitment, because without commitment, everything becomes temporary. You start, then stop. You build, then pause. You move, then drift. And over time, those interruptions destroy your progress, not instantly, but slowly, quietly, until you're back where you started. Now here's the truth most people avoid. You cannot escape low income with a temporary mindset. You can't treat it like a phase, like something you'll do for now, because the moment it gets hard, you'll stop, and it will get hard. That's guaranteed. So commitment is what carries you through those moments. When motivation disappears, when results are slow, when doubt shows up, commitment says, keep going. Now here's the deeper layer. Commitment is not about intensity. It's about identity. Because when something becomes part of who you are, you don't question it. You don't debate it. You just do it. Think about this. You don't question brushing your teeth. You don't debate going to work. Why? Because those actions are part of your identity. They're non-negotiable. That's what commitment needs to become. Your growth, your building, your progress must become non-negotiable, not based on mood, not based on circumstances, but based on identity. Now pause. Ask yourself, am I trying to change my life, or am I committed to changing it? Because those are not the same. Trying is conditional. Commitment is absolute. Now here's something important. Commitment doesn't mean you never struggle. It doesn't mean you never doubt. It doesn't mean everything becomes easy. It means you don't stop, even when it's hard, even when it's slow, even when it feels uncertain. You keep moving. Now let's connect this to discipline, because commitment is what fuels discipline, and discipline is what maintains action. As reinforced in ideas like discipline is doing what must be done, even when you don't feel like it. And when you're committed, you don't rely on feeling. You rely on decision. You rely on standards. You rely on identity. Now, here's the shift. Stop asking, do I feel like doing this today? Start asking, is this who I am now? Because when your actions align with your identity, consistency becomes natural. Now let's make this practical. That 1 hour you claimed, it's no longer optional. It's not something you do when you have time. It's something you protect every day, because that hour is your path out. Now, here's something powerful. Commitment simplifies decisions. You don't waste time choosing. You don't overthink. You don't negotiate with yourself. You just act. And that clarity makes everything easier. Now here's the line to remember. Trying changes nothing. Commitment changes everything, because trying allows you to stop. Commitment doesn't. Now let's bring this together. You've built the foundation. You've developed the mindset. You've started taking action. Now commitment is what makes it permanent. It's what turns temporary effort into lasting change. Now in the next chapter, we're going to talk about something that determines how far this commitment can take you. Your vision. Because if you don't know where you're going, even the strongest commitment can lose direction. And clarity of vision is what keeps you moving forward, even when the path gets difficult. Increase your income or stay in the cycle. There is a truth that cannot be avoided. Mindset matters. Discipline matters. Consistency matters. But if your income doesn't grow, your situation won't change enough. You might become more focused, more aware, more disciplined. But if your earning capacity stays the same, you're still inside the system, just managing it better. And management is not escape. Now let's be clear. Escaping low income requires one thing: increasing how much value you create and how much you get paid for it. Because income is not random. It is a reflection of value, not your effort, not your time. Value. Now here's where many people get stuck. They focus only on saving money, cutting expenses, reducing costs, being careful. And while that helps, it has limits. You can only cut so much. You can only save so much. But income has no ceiling. If you increase your value, you can increase your income. And that's where real change happens. Now let's slow this down. There are 3 ways to increase income. The first is increasing your skill value. You become better at something that pays, you solve bigger problems, you create better results, you become harder to replace. And when that happens, you earn more. This is the most direct path. The second is increasing your output value. You produce more, not by working longer, but by working smarter, using systems, using tools, using leverage. So your effort creates more results, and more results mean more income. The third is increasing your opportunity value. You position yourself in better environments, better industries, better networks, better roles, because where you operate matters. The same skill can pay very differently, depending on where it's used. Now here's the truth most people avoid. If you stay in the same environment, with the same skills, doing the same things, your income will stay the same. Not because you don't deserve more, but because nothing changed. And income follows change. Now pause, ask yourself honestly, what am I doing right now that could increase my income? Not someday, not in theory, right now. Because if the answer is unclear, that's the gap. That's what needs to change. Now let's connect this to everything we've built. You have your 1 hour. You have your focus. You have your consistency. This is where income growth begins. Because that hour is where you build value. And value is what gets paid. Now here's something important. Income growth is not instant. Just like everything else, it compounds. At first, nothing. Then small increases, then bigger shifts, and eventually a new level. But only if you stay consistent. Now let's talk about a mistake many people make. They chase quick money, shortcuts, fast results, easy wins. And sometimes it works for a moment, but it doesn't last. Because it's not built on value. It's built on luck. And luck is not a strategy. Now here's the shift. Focus on building value, not chasing money. Because money follows value, always. If you build something useful, something that solves problems, something that people need, income becomes a result, not a struggle. Now let's connect this to mindset again. You need to start seeing yourself differently, not as someone who earns, but as someone who creates value. Because creators grow, earners stay limited. Now, here's a powerful question. What problems can I solve that people are willing to pay for? Because that's where income lives, not in effort, but in solutions. Now, let's make this practical. Pick one direction, one skill, one path, one way to create value, and go deep. Build it, improve it, refine it, because depth creates income potential. Now here's the line to remember. You don't escape low income by saving more. You escape by earning more. And earning more comes from becoming more valuable. Now let's bring this together. You've built the foundation. You've created momentum. You're committed. Now income growth is what turns all of this into real change, not temporary improvement, real movement. Now in the next chapter, we're going to talk about something that determines whether that income actually leads to freedom. Because earning more is not enough. You also need to manage it differently. And most people fall back into the cycle, even after they start earning more. Continued in next message. Continue. chapter 23. Why more money doesn't always mean freedom. There is a trap that catches people right when they start making progress, right when things begin to improve, right when income starts to increase, and it pulls them right back into the cycle. It's called lifestyle inflation. Now let's slow this down. You work hard, you build skills, you increase your income, and for the first time, you feel relief. You can breathe a little easier. You have more options, more flexibility, and then your life starts to expand. You upgrade your lifestyle. You spend a little more. You allow yourself things you couldn't before. And at first, it feels like progress, like you've made it. But slowly, something changes. Your expenses increase. Your obligations grow. Your comfort zone expands. And before you realize it, you're back in the same position, working to maintain instead of building to escape, just at a higher level. That's the trap. Now, here's the truth most people don't want to hear. If your income grows, but your expenses grow with it, you are still stuck, just in a more comfortable version of the same cycle. Now, let's go deeper. When you increase your income, you have a choice. You can use that extra money to improve your lifestyle or to improve your future. And most people choose lifestyle because it feels immediate, it feels rewarding, it feels like success. But real success is not what you can spend. It's what you can build. Now, this doesn't mean you should never enjoy your money. That's not the point. The point is balance. Because if you consume everything you earn, you reset your progress every time. And that's how people stay stuck, even when they earn more. Now pause. Think about this. If your income doubled today, what would change? Would your life improve long-term or just temporarily? Because that answer reveals your current pattern. Now, here's the shift. When your income increases, your priority should not be comfort. It should be leverage, reinvesting into things that grow, skills, systems, opportunities, assets, things that increase your future income, not just your current lifestyle. Now let's connect this to everything we've built. You've worked to increase your value. You've built momentum. Now this is where discipline evolves. Because now it's not just about showing up. It's about managing what you create. And that requires awareness. Because money amplifies behavior. If your habits are undisciplined, more money will make them worse. If your habits are intentional, more money will accelerate your growth. Now here's something powerful. The goal is not just to earn more. It's to create space. Space to think, space to build, space to grow. Because space is what allows you to move beyond survival. Now let's make this practical. When your income increases, split it. Not necessarily in exact percentages, but in intention. Some for living, some for enjoying, and some for building, always for building. Because that portion is what creates your future. Now here's the deeper layer. You need to delay gratification, not forever, but strategically. Because what you delay today can multiply tomorrow. And what you consume today disappears. That's the trade. Now here's the line to remember. If you spend everything you earn, you stay where you are, no matter how much you make. Now let's connect this to identity again. You are no longer just someone trying to survive. You are someone building, someone thinking long-term, someone creating freedom. And that identity should reflect in how you use your money, not impulsively, but intentionally. Now let's bring this together. You've increased your income. Now you must manage it differently. Because escape is not just about earning more. It's about keeping and growing what you earn. Now, In the next chapter, we're going to talk about the final shift, the one that ties everything together, because at this point, you're no longer the same person who started. Your thinking has changed. Your actions have changed. And now, your identity must fully evolve, because real escape is not just external, it's internal.